What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We're back with another video. So, just yesterday, it was announced that Callum Smith will be defending his WBO interim title against David Morrell. And let me just say, what a fight. We have two big punchers in the division. I guess you could say two seasoned veterans. Though David Morrell, he only sustains, if I'm not mistaken, maybe about 16 or maybe 15 professional fights. But regardless of that, he has a big amateur pedigree, big amateur background, and although he may not have that much professional experience when it comes to the amount of bouts that he has under his belt, that extensive background, that extensive amateur pedigree plays a big role. I guess you could say it kind of semi replaces the 20, 30, maybe even 40 professional fights that some professional fighters may have. I know that sometimes it doesn't really work out, especially if you're looking to bait on that experience your first maybe 6 7 fights. Perfect example that I could think of, or I can think of two, would be the Lomachenko defeat that he had against Orlando Salido in his only second professional fight. And most recently, Andy Cruz with only 6 fights, stepping up to fight for a world title against Raymond Muratalla, a seasoned veteran with an extensive, I guess, maybe not too many fights under his belt or in his record, but an extensive career in professional boxing, where he had about 8 years of experience. With David Morrell is a little different. He does sustain a little more experience than his fellow Cuban than fellow Cuban Andy Cruz. However, he, although he doesn't have too many professional fights, I think he has sufficient experience to be able to, I guess, withstand the onslaught that Callum Smith might bring onto the table. Wow, like I said, it's a big fight. I'm excited for this. The winner of this fight is definitely gonna get a crack and a shot at a mega super fight, whether it's against David Benavides, whether it's against Dimitri Bivol. I think that should be the next step for both fighters, or for the winner of this fight. Callum Smith is coming off a long layoff. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is maybe his third long layoff that he's coming out of to for a big fight. The first time around, it was after the Canelo loss. He took maybe about a year and a half off. He ended up coming back to getting 2 fights under his belt, and then he had about a year and a half, almost 2 years of a layoff, and then he ended up coming up short against Beterbiev. However, in that span or afterwards, he ended up fighting that same year, but very late. I'm gonna say maybe December, November, right, if I recall correctly, of the same year. And his last fight was actually against Joshua Buatsi in February of 2025, if I recall correctly, because it was in the undercard of Dimitri Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev 2, the rematch. So that's the last time that Callum Smith fought, which, like I said, this fight with David Morrell is gonna take place in April. It'll be a little over a year since he last stepped in the ring. Last time he was in the ring, it was an action packed fight. It was a war. It was exciting. It was back and forth action. If anything, candidate for fight of the year. I'm not sure if it won fight of the year. I don't recall correctly, but it was for sure candidate for fight of the year. You saw everything. You saw inside fighting. You saw counter punching. You saw skill. You saw will. You saw grit. You saw determination. Everything that you wanted to see in a boxing match, you saw it in the Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith. Coming up victorious, he ended up positioning himself at the top once again to maybe secure another big fight, and he has. Like I said, he after the Beterbiev defeat, which happened, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was in February of 2024. If I'm not mistaken, I think in November of that same year, he ended up having I guess a return fight. If you could kind of call it a stay busy fight, or kind of like a comeback fight. And then a couple months after, in February of 2025, he steps in against Joshua Buatsi, the WBO interim light heavyweight champion, where Callum Smith is able to defeat him and get another belt under his waist, a secondary belt, of course. We must recognize and acknowledge that nowadays, man, any fighter has 20, 30 belts. Any and every fighter can be a 3 4 time world champion in the same weight class for the same organization, which it's nonsense. When it comes to those things that happen in the sport. I guess you can say that only ruins the reputation for the world champions that actually held that title, when the titles actually had a strong meaning to them. Nowadays, anybody can be a world champion. But back to the main topic of this video. Callum Smith versus David Morrell. I'm gonna analyze both fighters, both big punchers. If I was to give the slight edge to who can be a better boxer, use the ring a little more, who has better lateral movement, I'm gonna give it to David Morrell. Experience wise, like I said, that plays a big role in favor of Callum Smith. Um, both fighters have been at the top. Both fighters have fought the top dogs. Um, Callum Smith being in there with fighters like Canelo Alvarez and Artur Beterbiev. Um, David Morrell, of course, being in there with David Benavides. So they both have been at the top. Unfortunately, both have came up short against the top opposition, the top elite fighters in the divisions that they've respectively fought in. But I think this is kind of like a last shot for both, kind of like a last shot at redemption. Whoever comes out victorious, is gonna get another big fight. Is gonna get a crack at a world title once again. And the one that comes up short, I hate to say, I normally don't, but this time around, I do believe that whoever comes up short, I think that they probably would start thinking of maybe looking at a different direction, maybe stepping out of the sport. More so if it was to happen to Callum Smith, a seasoned veteran who's already about 34, 35 years old. So I don't think he's got that much time left in the sport. So if he was to come up short, I think he would maybe look to possibly hang up the gloves. He's had a long, extensive career, and a defeat of David Morrell, a tough, younger fighter, a tough fighter. I guess I could even consider him a quicker fighter. I would actually recommend him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was to take the retirement route. As for David Morrell, if he was to come up short, I don't want to say it would be the end of his career. However, I think it would just knock him down a couple steps below, and he would have to work his way up from the bottom to the top once again to secure another big fight. And it'll be pretty hard. It'll be pretty hard for him to secure another big fight if he was to come up short against Callum Smith. Um, it's a toss up. It's a pick 'em fight. It's a toss up. If I was to rock with anybody, I'm gonna rock with Callum Smith for the simple fact that he is trained by my teacher, the former world champion Buddy McGirt. So anytime that Buddy McGirt is in there, anytime that Buddy McGirt has a fighter that's stepping in the ring and that he's gonna be working the corner, I will by all means be on his side, and by all means I will always back up my teacher, my mentor, the man who taught me everything I know, and the man who I always reach out to up to today. I reach out to him very, very often whenever I need advice or whenever I have a question regarding a boxing technique or a boxing breakdown, or just advice in general. I always reach out, so I'm always gonna rock with them. Um, with that being said, I'm excited for this fight. I actually can't wait to see this. I want to see the outcome of this fight. I want to see where the winner goes after, and yeah, like I said, the light heavyweight division is stacked as well. Unfortunately, fighters have been inactive. Beterbiev has been inactive ever since the Dimitri Bivol fight. Same thing with Bivol. Bivol actually went under surgery. Something wrong with his back. I don't recall exactly, but he's been inactive. Benavides is currently he's gonna make the move to jump up to cruiserweight to fight Zurdo Ramirez in the Cinco de Mayo weekend. So I guess the only two fighters left who would be, I guess, the next fighters in line would be actually David Morrell and Callum Smith. The next big names are the fighters below the elite level competition. It would be them, and like I said, the winner of that fight would get a shot at the elite fighters once again. And I think it's a last shot a redemption for both, like I mentioned. And I'm excited. I'm excited, and I can't wait to see that fight happen. That was it for this video, guys. I wanted to drop this video out there because, like I said, this fight was originally supposed to take place in either late February or early March. For some reason or another, it didn't happen, but I'm glad it's taking place in April. So I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.